Hello, old friend.
What's going on? My name is Eric Berry, and I am a comedian just trying to make it. And I'm going to discuss topics here, such as today's, which is going to be comedy and addiction. This was inspired by a recent interview with John Mulaney on CBS This Morning. So let's take a look.
In his most recent special, Baby J, he played to a sold-out crowd and focused on his drug addiction and recovery.
I walk into my intervention 2 hours late. According to my friends, this is what I said. Okay.
He describes a 2020 intervention on his behalf, staged by friends like Seth Meyers and Fred Armisen.
Let me just call this out now. I don't mean to be weird. It was a star-studded intervention.
It's funny now, of course.
I think something worth noting is that obviously John Mulaney is a celebrity. He's obviously very wealthy and obviously has friends who are celebrities, but that even someone with that kind of money and support system can still be a victim of addiction, and in some sense perhaps be even more enabled by it because they have more safety nets and more things to further the journey to rock bottom or slow it down, if you will. If you're a plumber, I don't know that you have those. Your rock bottom might be much shallower than a celebrity like John Mulaney's.
Mulaney says he's been clean for more than 4 years.
Forgive me if this is a naive question, but is sobriety something that you have to think about every day?
Well, that's a good question. I don't think about cocaine, opioids, and benzodiazepine every day. I'll acknowledge that I understand the vigilance I need. I do not think about it every day. I don't. I do think about the ways that I can lead my life to perhaps never feel the kind of strain that got me there. So yeah, sobriety maybe being like a bigger term than just abstaining from the chemicals. I definitely think about it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I also think that that's a little bit of a celebrity privilege in terms of not thinking about it every day because he has so much success. He's married to a beautiful celebrity woman. There are other pleasures of life that he can afford himself to. Whereas I think for your average person, that might be the most exciting part of their week is looking forward to a beer after work or, going out to the club and doing some MDMA or whatever, because they don't have anything else of the magnitude that someone like a John Mulaney is going to have in their life. I wanted to talk about, just generally speaking, I think that there's an association with comedians and drug addiction, drug overdoses, alcoholism. Certainly, like we look to people like John Belushi or Chris Farley, who died. And while I think there's some truth to that, I also think it's overblown a little bit. I'm going to take this gum out like a real professional. I do think that there are people who are attracted to doing comedy that are more inclined towards addiction. And I think that that's because people who produce art, so I don't think it's just specific to comedy. I think you see it in musicians. I think you see it in writers and painters throughout history. People who want to create art is abnormal, right? It's elevated, whether it's elevated joy or elevated depression or, artists, creative people are taking these wide swings. And I think that type of behavior, it's not about stability. It's not about staying within the range of normal. It's about hitting those altitudes and those poles on either side. And yeah, that's what a drug is going to do, right? Your drug and, is going to elevate where you're at, your mood, or it's going to depress you. And I think that personality is suited towards artistic people. That said, I think that it's also just that artistic people, if they're known in the public eye, we're going to make more out of or be more aware of their downfalls, right? Like I said, if you're a plumber and you have an addiction, apart from your family and, maybe some locals in your community, no one's going to know about that, right? It's not going to make headline news if you OD. But the other thing is with stand-up comedy, the environment just lends itself to literal darkness, right? You're in a dark bar, a dark club, dark theater, and it's at night. It's where people are drinking. That's what happens at these places. Where other people go to have fun is where you go to work. So your work is surrounded by these things. It's totally permissible to be drunk at your work. And there's not many jobs where you can say that. For you to be drunk, but for the other people around you to be drunk. That is I would say, the biggest part. The other thing is, even if you're just popping in to do a 10-minute set and pop out, if you're not at that level, if you're, as I'm at like an open mic level, sadly still, you have to wait around for hours upon hours. Sometimes, this happened the other week. I didn't even get to perform because I had to go home. I had to work. I was too tired. I got to an open mic at 7:45, and by 12:15, I still wasn't on. And I was like, dude, I got to go. When you're waiting around and your mind has nothing to do, you're like, how do I pass the time? People end up drinking because they're spending hours upon hours in a bar like that. There is no HR department in comedy, and there couldn't be because of what happens where we do these things, again, at bars, and the things that we say. Our creative expression would not, most people can't go around making dick jokes at their work. Some people can, but comedians fall into that zone. It's stressful when there's no high, like just killing it on a show. You're like, oh my God, let's celebrate with the beer. And there's no low, like just bombing in front of a crowd. You're like, oh my God, I'm so depressed. Let's go have a beer. And all you have to do is walk 15 feet, if that, and there's the bar right there to do it. Or, there's a lot of pressure. People, you have your peers around you, they're drinking, maybe they're doing drugs. You do really well. Someone says, oh my God, that was great, man. Let me buy you a shot. There's just, the environment is built for non-healthy behaviors from a variety of different angles. When you get to the level where you're touring and you're going around and you're visiting places, what would be a vacation for most people? Oh my God, hey, we're going to go to New York City. Oh, we're going to go to Miami, whatever. Comedians are doing that all the time. So you're also constantly in this kind of vacation mode, right? There's not a stasis where you can get into a routine. Your routine is a non-routine. It's being in different cities, different hotels, different clubs, different bars, different people all the time. It's just all this stimulation. The only constant is that you're around alcohol and frequently, drugs. That's not to say that you have to become addicted to something to do comedy. But I will say, there's a lot of openly sober people in the comedy community, and sober because they, presumably had an issue with it. And it's completely understandable how someone who had a proclivity towards being addicted could have that triggered and opened up in a comedy setting, or even someone who, didn't have a proclivity towards addiction could develop one by being in this environment. There's also people who are totally even-keeled and reasonable when it comes to alcohol and drugs to some extent in the comedy scene. But that's just my assessment as to why maybe you see kind of a preponderance. Is that the right word? I'll look it up. Anyway, give me a follow. I'll see if I can find an open mic clip and throw in here. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.